welcome back to another episode of Truth Talks with Tara, where we know, love, and live God's word through conversations solo, but also some of my favorites with incredible guests, where we just talk about what it looks like to uncomplicate our faith, live it out in our daily moments. And today we're specifically talking about what that looks like in our mornings, in those rhythms. And I am especially giddy today because I have a friend returning to the show. I tried to do the math, but I didn't really fully get there yet this morning. But it's been a couple years, or maybe even more than that, since Jennifer Dukes-Lee has been on the podcast. And I want to share a little bit of the story of how we met before we get into it. Jennifer's really special to me, not only because she is just an incredible, bubbly person. What you see is what you get online. She's truly who she is, but she's really special to me because she is someone who early on in my years of pitching a book and writing books and being like, I don't know what's happening. How do I do this? She was someone who championed me. She actually was like, hey, let's work together, because she's actually an editor for a really awesome publishing house. We didn't end up going that direction, but she still was such a champion in that process, encouraged me, prayed for me, asked how it was going. It's just been a blessing to know her. And so to be able to celebrate another one of your books, Jennifer, that is out in the world now, I'm just so grateful. So now that I won't be done gushing, but now that I'm done gushing now, I want you to share a little bit more to our friends listening about who you are, what you do. And then I have a random question for you, but I'll let you start with that.
Okay, Tara. I love that our history goes back to that moment. I'll never forget it. I love your books.
So sweet.
I am just so grateful. And in ministry, just to see each other online and get to support each other online, but also on the podcast. So thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Jennifer Dukes-Lee. I am in Iowa. I live on a farm. And this is a 5th-generation family farm. And we grow crops. And we grew kids. The kids are out of the house now. They're adults. And we are officially empty nesters. And I am here, I guess, in my role mostly as a speaker and an author, but also just a human being who has a morning. Like we all have mornings, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned how to do them well in my life. And it's been a joy to get to write from that place in this new book.
I love that so much. Yeah, you have really showed us just the joy and the practicality of having a rhythm and having a beautiful morning, which we're going to get into. But my random question that I told you I was going to ask. So we kind of did like a facelift to the podcast. Like the mission is still the same, but I wanted to ask like a new question to people that I thought would be funny. And so I'm going to catch you off guard a little bit this morning. So I want to ask you if what meal you would eat for the rest of your life. Like, is there a meal that you love that much? Kind of like a death row meal, you know, like your last meals kind of, but like one that you could eat every single day and not get tired of. That's just like your favorite. And I ask this because I'm like a big foodie. I'm a big cook. And I also think that hearing this tells a lot about who someone is.
Okay, so what is going to be slightly disturbing for you, potentially, Tara, and your listeners, is that I am literally obsessed with last meals of people on death row. So I can assure you, I already know what my last death row meal is.
You're like, I am ready for this.
I am ready. Like, I know what it is. It's my grandma's noodles. My grandma, Taylor, and my grandma Dukes both made noodles for every holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, anything in between if we happen to be down there. But it was homemade noodles. And then we put them on top of mashed potatoes. So it was the ultimate carb fest. I know it doesn't sound right.
And okay, what are on these noodles?
They're just, they're just like flour. I mean, they're just like regular noodles, except that they're homemade. And there's chicken broth with it. There's little bits of chicken in it. And then, you pile them up on top of mashed potatoes. And it just doesn't even really sound interesting. It doesn't sound like any kind of gourmet thing. But I mean, we begged our sister Julianne to please learn how to make grandma's noodles, because when both of the grandmas were gone, none of us knew how to make them.
Yeah.
So now the tradition continues, but I for sure could eat grandma's noodles every day for the rest of my life.
That is really fun. I actually love that. And you know what? I'm not opposed to that. Some people will think that's crazy to put noodles on top of mashed potatoes, but those are two favorite things of mine, and it sounds honestly amazing. This is so, so fun. And I'm glad that the tradition is kept alive in that way. I don't know. There's just something so special. And I feel like that comes out of a lot of people's favorite foods is foods around holidays and
Yeah,
traditions and like the memories. Of course, they're delicious, but it's more like the memories and the thoughts behind it, you know? It's so
absolutely.
special. I
Yeah.
love that so much. Okay, so let's dive into our conversation today. We are talking about your new book called How to Love Your Morning. The subtitle is Faith Filled Habits to Build a Life of Joy and Purpose One Day at a Time. And it's been out for about a month now at this point, as friends are listening. And I want to hear a little bit more about why you wrote this, because you've written numerous books before this. Growing Slow is one of my favorite books that you have written. As a fellow farm girl, it just hits my heart in a really sweet way. But I sense this theme as I've read a lot of your books about just taking one day at a time, being faithful, intentional in our rhythms, and I feel like this book is no different. So why mornings? And then also, are you a morning person? Like, let's
Oh,
unpack this.
okay, that sounds great. So every other book that I have written, including the one that you mentioned, Growing Slow, is written out of a place of some like personality flaw, some character
Yeah.
flaw, something that God was working out in me. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
my very first book dealt with the fact that I wanted people's approval over God's approval. I'm a bit of a control freak. So I wrote It's All Under Control. It would have been easier for me to write a book called Growing Fast, but God needed to slow me down. So I wrote
That's
Growing
good.
Slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this book came from something that I've actually done pretty well for most of my life. Not perfectly, but pretty well. And it was actually my daughter Lydia's idea that I should write this book, which was kind of cool. She's like, Mom, you got to write a book about mornings. And I'm like, what do you
Oh.
mean? She's like, you have always had this attitude that everything can be better in the morning, that if
Mm.
we just give it a little bit of time, if we wake up with hope, if we wake up with God, if we take our time with simple rhythms every morning, that the day can be different because you've set the stage, Mom. You could write a whole book about this. And so honestly, Tara, if I were to look back on my life, I wouldn't have said I'm a morning person, because to me, being a morning person looked a certain way. And especially with the Instagram aesthetic slapped up on top of it, it looks
Right.
like if you're a morning person, that means you get up at 5 a.m., you run a half marathon before breakfast, you exegete the entire book of Leviticus, you iron your bed sheets, you do all of these things like that would leave me exhausted before 8 a.m.
Right.
Like I do not jump out of bed like a Disney princess. My hair is sticking out in 10 different directions. But what I do is I wake up believing that what God says is true, that though weeping may last for the night, that joy comes with the morning,
I
that
love that.
his mercies are new every morning, as it says in Lamentations. And that's the way I've lived. And it hasn't been pretty. Nobody's going to put it on a Pinterest mood board, but it became a book. And that was so exciting for me because I've learned, even in the hardest mornings of my life, that with
Yeah.
good habits and practices, that I start my day out with God and I start my day out with hope, and it makes all the
Yeah.
difference. It's
Yeah.
not a clock thing, it's a God thing, which means everybody's a morning person.
Ooh, okay. I like that. It's kind of a hot take for some listening.
It
But you
is.
know what I love about hearing this is that it seems that you've had these like pillars that have carried you throughout your life. But I
Yeah.
want to hear more about, like you said, you're a mom, you're a wife, you work, you have a social life, you get sick, I mean, you do all the human things. Are there certain things, and of course, I think we all know the obvious answer, the Lord and his word, but with that, are there also and unpack, maybe the truths that you've held on to from the Lord over the years in different seasons of your life, right? Like freshly postpartum with your kids, or
Mhm.
newly married, or in school. Because we have a lot of younger women, a lot of young moms, a lot of people in ministry that listen to this podcast. And I'd be really curious, were there pillars that no matter how much the seasons of your life changed, that anchored you in your mornings? Because I'm speaking from my own experience here, that's the hardest thing for me lately, is that I would actually say I've mostly been a quote unquote morning person, but with having little boys, with going through some other seasons of my life that are more difficult, it can make the mornings more difficult. So maybe for those listening, like what have been those pillars? Maybe are there things that we can start implementing that it's like we might come to the table with excuses of like, the season of my life is really hard, but I want to love my morning. How do I do this?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about the pillars. I'm going to do a 30,000-foot view, and then we're going to jump into the weeds, if that's all right.
Love it.
So the big view of that has been my morning philosophy has been really dictated by the morning routine of Jesus. Now, if you go to the Bible, you're not going to see like, oh, these are the things that Jesus did every morning. But we know that Jesus was a devout Jew. And we know that the Israelites prayed a prayer called the Shema for centuries before Jesus was born. So then we know that Jesus would have heard the Shema every morning in his house, and he would have recited the words as he got older as a part of his faith tradition. And we see the Shema echoed forward in Mark chapter 12, and it says, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and all of your soul and with all of your mind and with all of your strength."
Yeah.
So that is rooted in the Shema. That was Jesus' morning ritual. I don't know everything else he did, but I'm fairly certain as a devout Jew, he would have done that. And that's the pillars. That's the pillars that you speak of, this idea of loving God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And it is, in essence, a way of daily expressing Jesus' intention to love God with his whole being. And I think that's really beautiful. And that can be our morning intention as well, to love God with our heart and soul and mind and strength. So what does that look like down in the weeds and the practical things? So clearly, heart and soul is the time that we spend with God.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do in whatever kind of quiet time we have. How do we love him with our mind? Well, we think about what are we pondering? What's going on inside of our mind every morning? Like what kind of work are we doing to bring good thoughts into our mind? How can we love God with all of our mind?
Yeah.
And then how can we love him with all of our strength? For me, that has always looked like getting the sleep I need, not staying up doing what's called revenge bedtime procrastination, where you're going to watch just one more Netflix show because you feel like you finally got a little bit of me time, but you end up paying for it the next day.
Right.
Loving God with your strength looks like getting enough sleep. It looks like eating breakfast. It looks like putting good things into your body, like water, and let's face it, a little bit of coffee. And food.
I would say.
And taking your meds, like doing those things. Loving God with your strength also includes some kind of morning movement. It doesn't mean that you have to go do a HIIT workout in the morning. I do, but you don't have to do that. It could be just morning stretch, stepping outside, taking your dog out for a walk, something that just gives you energy and is a way of treating your body with dignity. So all of those are ways to love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, which become the pillars.
Yeah.
Your question of, but how do you do that in a difficult time of your life?
Yeah.
And I think that I have learned that in the most difficult times of my life, it has been tempting to think that a morning ritual is dispensable, that I can just get rid of it, that I don't have time for it. But what I have learned during the hardest seasons of my life is that I need my morning ritual, not only on my best days, but especially on my worst ones.
Yeah.
And that's because a morning ritual offers predictability and stability.
Yeah.
It helps us to depend on Jesus from the start and to treat our bodies and our souls and our minds with respect. So finding those things, whether you're a young mom, whether you're a college student, whether you're in ministry, whatever that season of life is, finding those things that create predictability and stability and intention to your day from the moment your feet hit the floor is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love this. I actually was talking to someone the other day, and my first book, very similar in messaging, and I think we're personality similar with just wanting to control a lot of things. My first
Yeah.
book was how to find that freedom and not, death gripping onto our lives, but instead surrendering and letting God have the control that He has. And I was talking to a friend and said, if I could add a chapter, if I could, add something to that book that I wrote 5 years ago, especially being a mom, especially living a little bit more life and going through some more grief and just different seasons of my life. I think I would add a chapter that says, yes, while we are not sovereign, while we are not the one who holds the pen, we do have personal responsibility. And I would go into the fact that I love that you mentioned this, where we do have, God has given us that free will and a sense of control over, you get to decide what you fill your days with. And I love that you reminded us that in those seasons of turmoil and grief, especially in the seasons that feel a little bit out of control, that God has given us the tools and the things that we can implement in our days to help us stay a little bit more grounded. I mean, I'm even seeing this in my 4-year-old. He's like, Mom, like he gets kind of thrown off sometimes when we don't have our predictability. And while there is so much benefit and beauty to being flexible, right? And to being like, not every day is going to look the same. But if there's just these pillars and these things that keep us grounded, I think it removes the overwhelm, right? And it helps us to not spiral. And Jennifer and I were talking, friends, before we even hit record, that as we're recording, in the last 5 months, Michael, my husband, has lost his grandpa, and then I've lost my grandma. We've gone through a lot of grief in a short amount of time, and I have seen my morning slip because of that. I have been, kind of loosening the reins on certain things. And while that might have been okay for a week or so, when I started to perpetuate that in my life, I realized that I was lacking the energy, I was lacking joy, I was lacking just a lot of things because I had just thought, well, this season I just need to let it all go. When I think there is so much beauty, and I love that you said that, Jennifer, about giving ourselves those things to look forward to remember that we're also a whole person. This is not an original idea, but I wrote this in my last book, that we are a whole person, that we were
Yeah.
created with a mind, a body, a soul, and a spirit, and that the Lord does not want us to neglect our physical body. He does not want us to neglect our mental health. He does not want us to neglect our Bible time. I think it's so easy as Christians to be like, well, the most important thing I do today is spend time in the Word with God, which is true, but it doesn't mean that everything else is sacrificed. It doesn't mean that we sit on the couch and we eat chips all day. It doesn't mean that we sleep in until noon every day. It doesn't mean all these things. Like, there is good things and discipline in those routines. And so I want to kind of transition now. I always butcher this word, but in the book, you say that there is morning archetypes,
You got
archetypes.
it.
I never know how to
Archetypes. You got it.
archetypes. So let's talk about a morning archetype, and for our friends listening, how they can kind of figure out what is theirs and what this looks like for them.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked. When I started writing the book or researching the book, I was like really hopeful that I could find a tried and true one size fits all morning ritual that would like reinvent everybody's morning. And there are
Right?
secular books like that say you need to get up at this time and this is the things that you need to do in the first 30 minutes of the day.
Well, Instagram
But
influencers, right? Like,
oh,
type in morning routine in the search bar and you'll see
100,
everyone getting up
yes.
at 4 a.m. You'll see them drinking a celery juice. You'll see them walking on the walking
Yep.
pad. And you're like, if I'm not doing that, what's wrong with me? Right?
I know, right? And it can just feel like, well, no wonder we don't think we're morning people. Like, no wonder we can wake up just defeated in the morning and thinking, well, I guess that's good for them, but it's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I even fell into that when I was writing. Like, what works? What works for me? I'm going to teach them to do exactly that. But it was so clear right away that this was going to be an impossible task because
Yeah.
each of us is at a different life stage, and mornings are going to ask different things from
Sure.
whether you're a young woman that's in college to an empty nester.
Yeah.
And so that's where these archetypes came in. See, I can't pronounce it either.
It's like, how do you say this?
So to define an archetype for anybody who's wondering, this is like a kind of like a personality. Like, what's your morning personality, right? So there's none of these that are superior to each other. Just in the same way that you pointed out, like this holistic view of ourselves, the same is true of these archetypes. Okay. So there's four different archetypes. And the one that people might be tempted to think is the superior type as a Christian is a meditative mind. And the meditative mind is awesome. They are immediately drawn to a morning ritual that begins in prayer, like first thing
Mm.
before they do anything else, Bible study, quiet time, what have you. And these are great activities. I want everybody to have at least a bit of time with God, like
Yeah.
intentionally in the morning. But
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
people that just start right there. So that's one type. The second type is the daybreak doer. And this is a person who's ready to hit the ground running. They feel most relaxed and ready for the day when they have a clear idea of what's ahead.
Yep. I
So
think that's me.
they,
I think that's me.
yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's like sometimes as a doer, I'll bet you're like, okay, if I just put this down on a to-do list, if I just mentally prepare for what's ahead, then I can go over here and do my Bible time well, because I know that I am
Mm.
settled and ready. The kitchen is tidy, the to-do list is ready, the work is waiting for me here in the office in a little bit because I did that right away. I know what's ahead. So that's a daybreak doer. The third type is a morning mover. So this archetype, um, she really functions best if she can get physically moving. It
Mm.
kickstarts
Hmm.
her metabolism and her mood. So
Yeah.
that might be headed out the door immediately for like functional strength training. It
Yeah.
might mean doing a stretch routine in the living room. It might mean taking the dog for a walk. Getting moving is super helpful. And then finally is the social seeker. So this is somebody who craves social interaction right away. They love being around people. I had a daughter who was 100% a social seeker. It's like she would bound out of her bedroom and she had stories pent up within her for an intolerable number of hours, and she needed to tell me all about it. And she also wanted to be held, and she wanted to be hugged, and she wanted to be encouraged. She was a social seeker. And all of these are a reflection of who God is. He is the
Mm.
ultimate daytime doer. He
Mm.
is the
Yeah.
ultimate meditative mind. He is the ultimate mover.
Yeah.
He's socially seeking time with
Mm.
us. So knowing your own archetype
Hmm.
is helpful as you begin to customize your routine. What you'll want to do is incorporate activities common to your type into your morning ritual at the very top of your ritual, so that you begin the day with something that you know will motivate you to wake up.
Yeah.
So I've got a quiz that helps you figure it
Yeah.
out, but you kind of just know by the description what you
Yeah,
are.
for sure. And I love that you're saying that it has to be in the realm of how God has created you, and of course, things that can draw you closer to the Lord and to other people, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think our priorities are out of whack a lot of times where we're watching other people or we're trying to improve ourselves, thinking, well, how is this going to make me more productive? Which is not a bad thing, but it's not the utmost thing, right? So
That's
when
right.
we're trying to figure out our archetype, when we're trying to figure out our ritual, having at the central core being just growing in the Lord, just thriving, just having a faithful, consistent day, I think has to be at the top instead of what we accomplish or how that makes us feel better about ourselves, which I think ultimately, though, when we do that, when we're aligned with the Lord and where He has us in our days and in our strengths and in our lanes, I think that does actually help us to be the most productive. And sometimes that looks different than other people, right? Okay, now my question as you were talking is this might be a little bit off the cuff, but I'm curious now. So, I want to know your archetype and I also want to know your husband's archetype and I want to know how does that work unless you guys are the same, but even I guess
Yeah.
if you're the same. How does that work with other people in your household that may not be the same? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
there could be something there for someone and I also need it too because I don't think my husband and I are the same at all in our mornings. We're really not. So how does that work in a relationship with people? How does that work in giving each other grace? How does that work in having a home, whether it's with your spouse or with your kids that operate a little bit differently, but how do we make that still a peaceful home that has a morning that's honorable to everyone, if that makes sense? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could really I could really see this benefiting myself. And so maybe I'm selfishly asking this too.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. And I think as soon as I start talking about how that works, I think your mind is going to start thinking of the possibilities.
Okay.
So my morning archetype is morning mover. My best mornings are the ones when I get up actually earlier than I want to, but I am motivated to get up because I love moving my body with my friends. So maybe there's a bit of a social seeker in me as well. And on that morning, after my workout, I come home, I make my coffee, and then I do my Bible study,
Mm-hmm.
and then I do my work and so forth. My husband is a meditative mind.
Okay.
He has no interest in going to work out with me. He does love to every morning sit in his recliner. He flips on the fireplace,
Hmm.
the one of
There you
those
go.
switch on the wall.
Yep.
He
Yep.
always and he's got his chair and his blanket and his Bible. And as a part of his meditative mind, he is reading whatever he doesn't have like a fancy Bible study or a devotional. He just reads
Yeah.
the scriptures.
Yeah.
And then after that, he's on his phone checking what the news of the day is. He's a total news junkie. So he's paying attention to what's going on in the world, which I think is part of an important part of a meditative mind. Like thinking through what is happening in our world is an important thing to do. So, but how does this work if we are in close proximity to each other and we have different styles? How this works is that it is possible to not only honor the different types of um, archetypes, it's possible to blend them in the same
Okay.
household.
Okay.
So let's say that Scott and I wanted to enjoy our mornings together. I'm a mover and he's a meditative mind. Well, you know what we could do? We could go on a walk together and pray over the people in our neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could both be on treadmills at the fitness center with the
Mm-hmm.
same worship playlist
Yeah.
going through our minds. There's ways to combine these. Like if you're a social seeker, maybe one of the first things you do is you're texting your group of friends, like if
Mm-hmm.
you live alone, you're texting your friends the Bible verse of the day that you guys are all studying together.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
combining social seeker with meditative mind. There's ways to combine all of these together. If you're a daybreak doer and you're trying to nurture that meditative mind in the house, as you're creating your to-do list, you list beside it things that you're grateful for, or jotting down a Bible verse that you don't want to lose sight of as the
Mm.
day starts to get moving forward. So
Yeah.
there's ways to
Yeah.
honor each other's types and even combine them.
I really like this because I know for our family that like it's so easy, and I don't think we're the only family, but like it's so easy to live separately sometimes. And not to say that you have to always do the same thing with a spouse. There's different schedules. People are moving out of the door, right, to go to work, or you're taking kids to school or whatever that looks like. But like to have some days or some weekends or some times where you can combine that to grow in relationship, to grow in intimacy with someone, I think it just helps us to really prioritize the family unit or
Mm-hmm.
friendship, marriage,
Yeah.
any kind of relationship, regardless of where you're at in your life. Because so much of our lives I've noticed, and I think this is coming out more and more, especially with social media and just different dynamics. I think secular dynamics is that I think families are moving further and further apart sometimes. And our
Yeah.
routines and our schedules are like, you do your thing over here. The kids are going to do their thing over here. I'm going to do mine. And we're just going to kind of meet up later. And where like, how can we integrate a whole family dynamic or friendships or a Bible study or a relationship with parents or your dorm mates? I think that's so, so important. And I'm grateful that you answered my random off the cuff question. I
You
think
know,
go ahead.
oh, I just thought, I mean, I just thought about something, how well I learned this from college girls. You
Oh,
mentioned
awesome.
dorms
Yeah.
because, Tara, I ended up interviewing hundreds of women, and in the back of the book, there are these guide to mornings. So, like, there's the College Girls Guide to Mornings. And in the book, I'm like, everybody needs to go read the College Girls Guide to Mornings. The level of care that these women I interviewed put into their wake up time and integrate with these women who live in close proximity, whether they're in a dorm room, a sorority house, or like renting a house together. I was blown away by the intentionality of, girls in the same house working on the same memory verse that is on the refrigerator, or sitting together doing their Bible study, or walking around the block together. It was so empowering, and showed how they were able to combine these types under the same roof. And I think, man, if college girls, like, they're just, they have so much to teach us. And so I encourage anybody who picks up the book to read The College Girl's Guide to Mornings.
I'm so excited to look at that. I hadn't made my way back there yet, but I'm going to do that right now after we wrap up. But I am so grateful for you in this conversation and the way that you have inspired people to be creative, think outside of the box. I think there's such beauty, and I've seen this in my life, of doing something new, of trying someone else's suggestions, of not being afraid to break out of the mold and try something new, because that might just be exactly what your ritual needs to, again, have more time with the Lord, to have more presence in your life, to have, like you said in the subtitle, more purpose and joy in your rhythm. So I am so excited that people can get their hands on the book now, because it's been out in the world for a little bit now. So as we close, Jennifer, would you share a little bit about where people can grab the book, the quiz, and like everything else that you have going on? I know they're going to want to dive in. I think this is a perfect like spring summer read, as that's kind of the period that we're in right now. So don't let up on the gas this summer. I mean, find some really fun ways to implement this now. I think it's easy to let things slip in the summer, not saying that you can't go have fun and do vacations and, sleep in with your kids if they're, not in school, but just like taking it slow one day at a time and just seeing what works with you and the Lord. I think it would be a great time to try this now. So give us all the information so that they can start diving in.
Thank you. So you can get all the information about the book and the retailers at howtoloveyourmorning.com. To take the quiz and to get access to the Bible study videos, to get access to all kinds of morning related resources, you can go to howtoloveyourmorning.com/resources.
So fun. We're so grateful. I will have it linked in the episode description so you guys can go grab that. But Jennifer, I love you. I'm so glad we got to catch up today, hear more from you. It is always a joy. So thank you for coming back on the show.
Thank you.